In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course-Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. People don't buy from companies. They buy from people they like, trust, and believe can help them. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today we explore the psychology of sales mastery, the discipline behind lasting success, and the art of transforming objection into authentic human connection. Joe Dalton is a global sales expert, B2B mentor, and author of Salescraft, whose entrepreneurial journey began at just 13 years old, selling baked potato and discovering his life purpose in communication. As the founder of Breakthrough Brands, Joe helped companies across Europe and the US increase revenue by over 32% through human-centric systems rooted in trust, confidence, and discipline. With over 3 decades in business, Joe blends street-smart experience with behavioral psychology, showing that the key to selling isn't persuasion, it's alignment, empathy, and purpose-driven leadership. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Joe Dalton, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing really well. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining. I'm speaking to you. So yeah, it's all is good.
Fantastic. Well, we're very glad to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think this is going to be a very interesting with a very seasoned person interview-wise. We were just talking about that offline. So perhaps to kick us off, please tell us more about Breakthrough Brands.
Breakthrough Brands, yes, that is the brainchild of Joe Dalton. Probably going back maybe about over 10 years ago. Started off with just an idea about what people wanted. People wanted to have a brand. People wanted to break through and be successful. So I had a moment of clarity. I went, yeah, we'll call the business Breakthrough Brands. And then we created a podcast, which was Breakthrough Brands as well. And then that morphed into getting it wrong to get it right. But yeah, it's about common sense. It's the beliefs of helping people succeed. I think everybody has a story to tell, and not every story is rosy. Every business owner, entrepreneur usually has between 5 and 10 years of a struggle, of hard work and grit. And sometimes there is help needed along the way. And there's a lot of BS out there, and people just want to have conversations or listen to conversations of, intelligent conversations. So that's really where Breakthrough Brand sort of came from, and being living the dream every day.
Beautiful. And really talking about that dream, obviously I want to take you back to sort of the very beginning of all of it, from a baked potato. Perhaps so when you're talking about the perhaps humble beginning, I think that's quite an interesting one. Obviously your origin story is quite interesting. I will let you obviously talk about it, but then your first business, at 13 years old, a baked potato, and really sort of an image of what you always hold very much dear to your heart, right? Lifelong value and so on and so forth. Talk to us about, first and foremost, how did you get into that first business so young? Was it something in your family? How did you perhaps get this entrepreneurial fiber this quickly?
Well, I think there's entrepreneurial DNA in my family. My sister was an entrepreneur. I have family members that have all run small businesses. And selling the baked potato came from my sister. She was a civil engineer, and her backstory was she actually negotiated with Steve Jobs and closed the deal with Steve Jobs and built the Apple factories in Ireland, which now is the European headquarters. And so my sister was a tough negotiator. She was a super entrepreneur, and she then got the likes of Western Digital and a lot of pharmaceuticals into Ireland as well, and built their premises. So I learned a lot from her. But I've always been, from a very young age, I've always been in a driving seat. Going back, I think before I was 13, or maybe, I remember I got a part-time job in a pate factory, and I was cooking pate, and it was a small little business. And after a small piece of time, I was actually showing everyone how to do things, packing, shelving at 13. So I had that mindset of leadership to try and help things flow better. So I was doing that. But the baked potato was from my sister, who had a business selling microwave dinners, which goes back well before. And I had a little baked potatoes, and I was sort of selling them. And I kind of, at that moment in time, Sam, I remember talking to someone, and they gave me money. And I looked at it and went, holy shit, I just had a conversation with someone and they gave me money. Is this it? So I think that was the love that I had about communication. I say sales, but it was about language and communication. And I think one of the biggest things that people search for now online is, how can I be a better communicator? And communication is a science and it's an art. And what really comes from all those years is that when I was coming from, say, 13, like I was a bus conductor, a part-time job as a bus conductor, collecting fares on buses. So I got to meet all different walks of life, and speaking to people on that. And I remember one time, two guys tried to jump me with a screwdriver and rob me, and, trying to deal with those moments of, oh my God, what's going on? But I left that and got in a job in selling office equipment. And the guy there, his name was Barry Gannon, it was an office equipment company, said something to me. And he said, you like people, they like you. And if they like you, they buy off you. And that resonated with me really right through my whole life. And that job was, grabbing a briefcase off the shelf and some brochures, and jumping on a train to the local next town, and basically at 19 knocking on doors, and saying to people, would you like to buy some office supplies and stationery? And this is the 80s, and I don't know, the 80s would have been a tough time. We had recession, and everybody was emigrating. And for me, a company car at 18 when everyone else was unemployed, and I had the first mobile phone when mobile phones were the size of blocks, and no one else, the only people you could ring was someone on a landline, because no one had mobile phones. And that sort of was driving for me, that I established that if you work hard and you pick up a trade, and my trade was sales professional, you could actually write your own paycheck.
Exactly. And it's so interesting, because there's a quote of yours, and you sort of alluded to it now. It's that first sale taught me everything, solve a real hunger, and people came back. And really, I always cite Simon Sinek, because there's somebody that is fresh on my mind. But really, the whole concept of what this gentleman told you about, people not only buy what you do, but they buy what you do it for, buy who you are, perhaps through it. And I'm very interested. Obviously, now you have multiple decades under your belt, but if you had to come back to that very first venture, no matter how little it was, what did you think that venture taught you, perhaps about product, about pricing, about repeat customers, that perhaps still guides your endeavors today?
Let me jump forward a little. And I was speaking to a client yesterday, and the old saying in business, why do people buy a drill? And everybody would say, to make a hole. But people don't buy a drill. They buy it for home improvement. They buy it because they have a vision. And what you have to feel and understand is when you're speaking to someone in sales, a prospect or a client, whatever you want to call them, it's not you trying to sell them something. It's you helping them with their vision. It's you helping them see what they want to see in the future. Now, either you are the person that can help them with that vision or someone else, but you need to know what that vision is. And I call that DBM. And DBM is dominant buying motive. It's the one reason why someone purchases a drill, why someone purchases a car, why somebody buys a house or a boat or a holiday. There's layers behind the concern or the problem or whatever. So going back at an early age, for me, it was money. Oh my God, I've just sold something. Money. Oh, I just sold something. Money. That can buy me this. That can get me that. This can do. And that's what, at 13 and in your teens, you're more interested in your social life and how can I fuel that social life? But as you get older, you get a little bit wiser and you sort of look at the regrets that you may have had and forgiving those regrets and learning from it through the whole process on it. Because when I was in my 20s, I then left Ireland and went abroad, and I think I had 2 suitcases, £200 in my pocket, and went to Germany. And I got into working in Germany for selling cars to the US military, and I was properly trained on how to sell then. And I then got an agency, and then I had a little agency over there, and that was life-changing. And it was like a billionaire's boys club. It was crazy, fast cars, money, partying, captive audience. And I wouldn't change any of it.
It's very interesting you mentioned this. We had the salesperson of the year, actually, Alicia Barr came on the show, and what you're talking about is alignment, right? And it's very interesting because I will quote one of my favorite men of all time, which just passed away, so rest in peace to him. JW Wilson was consequential to my life and our venture. And you always talked about this concept. You said it pretty much the exact same way, actually, which is layers, which is, well, they want to buy that car, but why? Perhaps what is the core desires? He called them core desire. You call it dominant, perhaps, motive buying. Really, it's very interesting because when you think about it as alignment, then really the discovery that really converts are more about question than pitches. And I saw that very, very soon, perhaps in life, that if you have to hard sell something, what you have is just not good enough. And I will be very frank with you, that simply is. And therefore, you have this whole system, perhaps, of turning those discovery into decision experience that I think is very interesting. You talk about it very often, diagnosing basically pain points, sizing impact, so on and so forth. I'm always interested in this because I'm a firm believer that a winning sales sequence and perhaps the step that needs to occur is very, very flexible in its applications. Everything in life is selling. Selling to somebody, selling yourself, selling anything. And really, I always come back to this fundamental idea that everything that occurs in life are people in a place discussing whatever needs to occur within such place. So I'm interested in, with all your experience, what sort of sequence of questions perhaps transform just a curious buyer into perhaps a committed buyer, if you had to name a few?
Yes, well, it starts off with the standard process is building rapport. It's trust, credibility. So that's what you're selling in the very beginning. You're selling yourself. You're selling your trust, your credibility, that the engagement or the conversation that you're having with someone is willing to move forward. But it's at that point where you need to then start asking the relevant questions. Because what happens with a lot of salespeople, they don't go into fact-finding, blueprinting, whatever you want to call it, discovery call. Because if you don't, and you then just go in about your presentation, if it's showing a car or some software or whatever, you get to the end, there's more objections and the person mightn't even be able to forward your product because you haven't done your homework correctly. So what you need to do, and I always say this, the secret in every sale, it's not the close, it's not the handling of the objections, it's actually the fact-finding discovery is the most crucial part, because in that part, you will either discover if the person is a right fit, you can work with them, they can work with you, they have the money, they have the authority, all these different things. And if it's not lining up, you say farewell and you move on to a prospect that fits everything that you're looking for. And in that section, if you ask the right questions, you are asking questions that may be objections later on if you don't do have the right homework, if you don't do it. And also you should be offering insights of it's not just being a sales professional, it's being a trusted advisor. So it's offering those insights. And again, you're trying to find that vision as well. And then when you get all that information, you're quickly calculating in your mind to go, okay, I now understand what this person needs and what they want, and they have the capital and they have the authority and it's in the time frame. Now I move them into the next stage of the sales. And it's a simple bridge that a person does, and that's just paraphrasing. So let me say, so I'm correct, that everything you've told me is blah, 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 da, da, da. Yes. Now that I have that, I think we have a solution called X that I see will benefit you, and I'd like to show you. And you're moving into it.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And that bridge is so important. And I retrieved this one-liner from you that I will steal from you, just by the way. So you have no choice on that. It was talking about objection. An objection is a request for clarity, not a boxing match. And I really think that when I see some salespeople, that's really what they see. Perhaps they see some type of adversary on the other side. They see perhaps this sort of boxing match that if they get the sell, then they won. If they don't get it, then the other side won. Perhaps. Have you ever felt that perhaps when I know that you're obviously around a lot of salespeople. This concept of boxing match is very interesting.
Well, it's even the word objection has a confrontational taste to it as well. Objection.
Yeah.
And we use objection in sales. This is what an objection is. This is what an objection is. And I say to the people that we train, stop using the word objection.
Interesting. So what do you use instead?
Concern.
All right.
So if someone has a concern or someone has an objection, the sales professional should be saying in their own mind, they should be hearing this in their own mind. Hey, I have a little concern. I'm wondering, could you help me with it? So if someone says, I don't like the color, don't think it as an objection. Hear them saying, hey, I have a little concern about the color. Could you help me? And if the sales professional treats them all like a concern, it actually softens it, keeps the conversation flowing, gives the other person intelligence for what they're talking about, of their concern, and helps you move the sale along.
Right. And that's the Salescraft systems, perhaps, right? You have this whole system that you came about, which is really sort of a human-centric playbook, I suppose, and it seemed like it's your flagship framework. Thank you for showing the book. And really, it's again, coming back to that alignment, so important. I think so many things in life, the more I read history, the more I read psychology, the more I read sociology, alignment is such an interesting word, I think, energically speaking. But that aside, perhaps, really the outreach, discovery, closing around the buyer's psychology is very, very interesting to me. And I study that at great length, right? Driving consistent wins, perhaps without scripts or gimmicks, or again, hard selling somebody because perhaps you're afraid of the value that you're offering. Really, to me, I always come back to this fundamental principle by Peter Drucker, which is, the fundamental purpose of a business is to create a customer, because obviously that's business is money in. There's no business without that. But that being said, when you think about it from an alignment perspective, really, like you said, switch objection for concern, but also these concern, I suppose. I always taught my whole team, and I saw my first company, I'm now at my second one already. Always think of yourself as not only a provider, but a resource, right? How can we give as much value as possible? Because humans beings are reciprocal in nature, and we know that from biology. And therefore, the people in which help you, you seek to help them in one way or another. That could be closing a sale, that could be all sorts of things. So really, when you're thinking about, if we opened, your Salescraft system to page 1, I didn't read it, by the way, so you'll need to walk me through it. What's the first repeatable behavior perhaps you install in a B2B team specifically? Because that's what I know that you specialize in. Tell us more about what is it, that very, very first step of the Salescraft system, if you could.
Well, the first thing in any system is confidence. And you can show everybody everything, give knowledge. But knowledge isn't worth really a damn unless it's put into experience. So the one thing that a person must be to be a top sales professional, and that's have massive confidence in themselves and the product that they're selling. Their self-esteem needs to be tightened up, lacking doubt, because most people fear of failure, fear of rejection, whatever that may be. So the first element in salescraft is about, it's working on yourself. It's the self-development, because when you come consciously aware of who you are, all that external garbage out there loses its power on you.
I was just rereading As a Man Thinketh, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And it's such a phenomenal work, and it's really discussing. It's interesting how you phrase that. It's really discussing about really a person with a clear visions that works on it, that perhaps is utilizing the tools that are necessary for them to get closer to such an objectives. Is one in which ultimately will have their dream life come about. And there's an energetic portions of that, but there's also, like you said, there's also this what I call quiet confidence. When I meet the best salespeople, sometimes I'm very shocked actually of what they look like. Or you always have this stereotypical perhaps salesperson. I used to have that when I went to my first sales gathering. I thought everybody would be 6'4", jacked, and just perhaps this sort of monster of a man, and really not the case at all. Sometimes it's this quiet confidence, this je ne sais quoi about making the other person comfortable. First and foremost, you need high emotional intelligence to be a great salesman. There's no doubt about that. But there's also this concept of self-improvement. I really want to dive deeper into this. To me, I always come back to Nietzsche. Right? Nietzsche said that the overuse of self-improvement is like mental masturbation, and really I think there's a balance with it. So when you mean by self-improvement, what is it exactly that you saw the best ways for salespeople to work on themselves? Is it reading? Is it re-listening their sales perhaps calls if they could? What does that mean, improving upon themselves?
Discipline and focus. So look at anything. We are creatures of habit. Sam, you get up in the morning. You probably get up at the same time. You put your right foot on the floor before your left, and you may go, this is brilliant, or you may go, damn. You either go and have a shower, or you go down and let the dog out, or maybe you go in and brush your teeth. You do the same thing over and over and over again every day when you get up. Okay, would I be correct in saying that?
Yes. Well, personally for me, just to give you a little routine, yes, I do wake up every single day at 4. I'm an early riser. I always been, and go to the gym, empty stomach, and then come back, then shower, then eat,
So you
then
have the
write.
same
Same thing,
and
praying, and then start the work.
praying, and then in the food we eat the same sort of
Oh yeah,
food all the time. Okay.
oh yeah, eggs and Greek yogurt, ladies and
Eggs
gentlemen.
and well, I've an omelette every morning with mushrooms and
There we go. Same thing.
same thing every morning.
Same thing.
I get up at 6 a.m. and I go to the gym, and I'm work ethic. I'm happy working either till 11 o'clock at night or taking a month off, whichever. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So what I'm getting at is we have habits, and our habits define us. And what we need to do as a salesperson or a person who's in business or working, you look at your life and you go, what do I need to do today to change? And I'm a true believer when I'm on stage and talking and I'm talking about self-development. I say to people, you have to give yourself permission to change. So if life is shit at the moment, excuse my language, pretend you have a big red button in front of you and you press that button and it makes a big noise and it's a reset button. And you ask yourself this question: what can I do right now in this moment of time to change? And you're giving yourself permission to change. So if you want to be a professional salesperson or you want to get good at something, it's about discipline and practice. And one of the core elements of when we teach people who want to change, we say, get a sheet of paper and write out what your life will be like in 3 years if you achieve all the goals that you want to do. And then under it, write out what your life will be in 3 years if you do absolutely nothing. And then under that, write down what you need to do weekly, what you need to do monthly, and what you need to do daily. And then get the focus and the discipline to do it. It'll be great in the beginning. And then the mind kicks in and goes, what are you doing? This is stupid. Why are we doing this? This is the mind trying to protect you from yourself. And you need to push past that. Have the discipline, have the focus. And then what seems hard actually then just comes a habit. And you've created a new set of habits. Like myself, example, I wanted to get up 2 hours earlier. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to get back training. And in that discipline, I lost 9 kg. I got my body fat down to 20%. I'm up early. I'm not a person that gets up at 6 or half 5, 6 in the morning and jumps on the PC. I probably bungle around for half an hour with a cup of coffee in my hand, and I have 2 dogs. But it's that discipline where I used to hate getting up early in the morning, and now it's just a way of life. 7 days a week.
Right.
But I don't go to bed till 11 or 12.
It's just the way it is now. It just seems
It's
natural.
normal. Yeah. So how does someone succeed in business? Discipline, focus, keep doing it. When everyone else gives up, it's the entrepreneur. Because salespeople, true sales professionals are entrepreneurs. They've high drive, they've high innovation, that they should treat the job as their own company. A sales professional should treat his job as him being an entrepreneur, because he can write his own checks.
Interesting. Very interesting. I have two thoughts on that. The first one is, your new life will cost you your old one. I love that so much. I think it's Jim Rohn, but I might be wrong. And really, when you think about it, this concept of being afraid, like you said, of growth, that's exactly right. Your brain main focus is to keep you alive, to make you survive. And therefore, when there's changes and there's chaos and instability, your brain doesn't like that, try to shy you away from it, which makes a lot of sense. The other thing is, I was just at the $100 million lunch by Alex Hormozi in Vegas, which you might be familiar with. And Alex talked every single time about the exact same thing. You say, the people in which succeed are not the most talented, are not the most intelligent. They're the one in which you do not give up when everybody else did. And that is it. There's a compound longevity aspect to life that is so exceptionally powerful. Buffett calls it, the whole world of finance calls it compound interest. But it is exactly that. It's a concept in which you exponentially, perhaps, only from a skill and ability perspective, but who you are became less repeatable because you became so much more. And it seemed like you have something to say on that. Do you want to add to?
Yeah, no, I'm just going back to what you told me about you go to the gym and about what Alex was saying there. And a marathon runner will hit a wall and then they break through that wall and they continue on. And if you're in the gym when you're lifting weights, you hit a wall.
Right.
And then you break through that wall. And in business, you hit a wall. And most people won't push through that wall. They'll feel down. They'll feel depressed. They feel tired and want to go to bed and have a nap. That there's all these things because what you're doing, and you said it there about, it's changing the mind, is that you're actually going, have a break, change the light bulb, climb into the attic and fix that thing in the attic that's been there for years, because it's the easier option.
Exactly.
Than actually the pain. Like, let me give you an example. I've just spent 6 months developing online sales training courses. So from the book, we've now developed a suite of modules for salescraft and referrals and all this other stuff. I've been podcasting since 2016, Sam, and I've spoken on stage to thousands of people. But I had a fear of getting online and just talking to a screen with no one there. I had to beat myself up at 55 to do that. And now I can't stop. I'm producing them like they're going out of fashion. It was hard. I was scared. I wasn't scared. I lack of confidence in it. But I could do all these other things. But I broke the fear. So as you were saying about that development, you have to go, screw it.
Exactly. You have to go. I heard this amazing quote, which is, embarrassment is actually a skill that you should train. You should go into places in which you are embarrassed for many reasons. The first one is because that's stepping out of your comfort zone. We talk about that very often, but it's still very true. Stepping out of the comfort zone is how you better your life, is how perhaps you make yourself better. Because again, like you said, you might have the confidence in XYZ setting. Confidence comes from the proof to yourself and the world that you are, who you say you are. But most importantly, it's repeat competence that builds confidence. I always thought that, and I perhaps always saw confidence this way. Is there people that are more naturalists to be confident? Sure. But I think that, again, this repeat competence that gets you to a point where you say, all right, I'm good in this, and therefore I'm confident in my ability, and let me put them on display. Really, I was having this very interesting conversation with a gentleman that has a network of over 100 professional speakers, and he told me the exact same thing that you just said. He said, Sam, they are on stage in front of 5,000 people, confidence, fully suited up, they look good, they are ready, and then they get to do short clips on camera or to explain basically what makes them different, or to record their keynote without anyone in the audience. Very different vibe, different atmosphere. There's nobody to look at in the audience. There's nobody perhaps to tell you if it's good or nodding or maybe laughing to a joke you make. It's with yourself. You with yourself, right? That's David Goggins as well. When David Goggins always talk about this, at the end of all things, when you're exhausted, when your body thinks you cannot do it anymore, guess what? It's who against yourself. It's you in your head against yourself. And I always love this concept of exceeding expectations, your own expectations first and foremost, but exceeding expectation when it comes down to the understanding of when the human species, we saw that with running a mile under 2 minutes. It was never been done, and I don't recall exactly what it was and when, but one person did it, and then 12 other runners did it in the same year, because we now perhaps got through that ceiling, through that wall, like you said, and we understood, hey, this is possible. We just need to train and continuously perhaps have discipline and focus. So really, I'm always been amazed of all of that.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing when someone does something, people go, oh my God, it's like, the first person that climbed Mount Everest, the next person done it in a better time. And now people are, trying to beat records all the time. I think the only record that you have to really beat is the one with the monkey on your back. When I was in my 20s, so running a business, an agency, making, a good living, a really good living. I had a question, and the question was, why so many people out there struggle? Life, if we are spiritual beings, spiritual being in a meat suit, life should be easier. Why isn't it easier for some people? And that was a quest that I went on. And what really made me realize how some people are successful and some people struggle in life. And it boils down to skill. And it boils down to pick something, one thing, and get really, 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 really good at it. And come an expert in that. That when you come an expert in that, other people that are expert in other things will want to tap into your expertise so they can bypass the learning curve. And if you come really good with something, then it's giving you the pathway to be successful. You can then take something else on and be really successful at that. But start off with one thing.
Very interesting.
Live it, breathe it. And when you do, everything else gets a lot easier.
So interesting you mentioned this. I was always fascinated by the debate of specialists compared to polymaths, perhaps. And really, in my own life, as I see it, I think that I love the Da Vinci concept. I've always been a huge fan. Da Vinci is one of my favorite men to study. And really, he came at it with everything that I'm doing is just adding layers, right? So when he was painting, he was adding a layer by understanding biology so much, right? By perhaps being able to have some cavator and study them super, super sharply so we can understand the intricacy between tendons and muscles and so on and so forth. And really, it's layers upon layers. But like you said, really, I believe that it's never been a bigger problem than right now because of our syndrome of shiny objects, and because we are now bombarded by 10,000 opportunities every single 4 hours. It is first and foremost, I think it's knowing yourself. I think so many people in their 20s, I meet them very often, and sometimes it takes more time than others to learn about yourself, and that's really fine. But perhaps I see them, and I say this with all due respect, but floating in the air, no real objective, no real core values, no ideas of what they want to be, perhaps. It is very problematic, very, very problematic. Do you have any children, by the way, Joe?
I just put you on mute there because I have a 9-year-old just burst in the door, and I have a 13-year-old, and I have a 21-year-old, and I have a 26-year-old.
Oh, wow. Okay, fantastic. So that's even better. So as a dad, perhaps, you've been very successful yourself. You've been through life in different things, perhaps different vehicles, different vessel, but again, growing John Dalton, I suppose. I'm really interested in their uprising and in the way perhaps you teach them, because they're all quite young, actually. Even 26, the older one, is still getting perhaps to a place where professionally he's expanding perhaps his surface of luck, as I like to call it. And I'm sure that he's an amazing kid. So really an amazing young adult, perhaps not a kid anymore. Really though, I'm interested in the way you were raising them, perhaps in a way in which you were trying to observate your character, your skill set, what you learn, your wisdom, I suppose, upon them. How important was it for you, and feel free to answer the question as honestly as you can, to really guide them to a place where they were writing their own story. They understood what story they wanted to written, and you helped them upon this story perhaps to write it as wisely as possible through your knowledge. Was that a core? Was that perhaps a one of the most important things for you as perhaps going into that family setting?
Now it is, but in the beginning it wasn't, because
Interesting.
you're a different parent to every different child.
Okay.
And anyone that has children will recognize that you are going through your own decades as well. So in your 30s, when you hit your 40s, you'll say, oh my God, if I knew what I knew now in my 30s, life would be amazing. And then the same in your 40s. And then when you hit into your 50s, you go, oh my God, if I knew what I knew in my 40s, life would be different. But you're a different person, a different parent for each child. And you have to think about that. Same person, but you're different because you're growing as well. And in the beginning, it's, what the hell? And the one at the end gets away with murder because you've learned a little. And I use it that when you get into your 50s, you come happy in your own solitude. You're able to face all your guilt and your shame straight on, and it loses its impact. And the people around you at that time, you understand are who your true friends are. So life changes as you're getting closer to the 60s and 70s because of the values change. But everybody should start off with values.
Yes.
What values do you represent? Pick 7. Why do you pick those 7? Because they will be you. They may change as you get older. So my values now is family, love, joy, happiness, and being honest, ethical,
Right.
truth. So you ask the question, what have I done to install something into my children?
Sure.
Question everything, even question me. Listen to what's being said and what's not being told.
Interesting.
Life, especially as we move into 2025 and beyond with AI and is making stupid people intelligent. And you will see things that people want you to see to attract your attention and keep it in fear-based. And what you need to do is you need to look at it and go, is this real? And how is it affecting me personally?
Interesting. Yeah, I just were gifted this book by my client, Be Aware But Don't Care. And that's a little bit of what he was talking about. This concept of questioning everything, this concept of really we gotta live in a world where, and especially I like the fact that you brought up technology, we're gonna live in a world very short-lived, that reality and the creation perhaps of reality that we can do through AI and also super intelligence and so on that is coming and so on it will be so amazingly replicated that we might have this concern about what is reality, what is truth, perhaps if the fabrication of it could be so great that people are falling into it. There's an interesting concern with all of that. Really though, the reason why I was going the children parts was because in order to grow anything, yourself, your loved ones, your business, there are levers perhaps that moves, regardless if it is those numbers, if it is aspirations, if it is objectives, whatever perhaps you want to move towards. There are levers perhaps to do so. And one thing that you have, which I want to dive deeper in from a system perspective, is the 33% lift. You talk about this 33% lift as a number. A big lift perhaps come from boring, excellent, clean pipeline, crisp offer, clear next step is exactly your words, right? Really though, I'm always interested to try to boil down, because a system must have metrics to not only keep it active, but also keep it measurable. What you track can be measured. What you measure can be improved upon. If you do not track, therefore you cannot measure, and therefore you cannot improve upon it, because you don't even know what you're talking about. And therefore, I'm really interested from your perspective, which 3 metrics, if you had to name a few, do you fix first, perhaps, in order to engineer a reliable double-digit revenue jump, perhaps? How does those occur? Because I know there's a system, there's a science to it. I'd love for you to talk to me about it.
Yeah, we look at KPIs, and people will look at a KPI, and a very good friend of mine, Jeff Smith, who's the top KPI guy in the world, he sold millions in his books and KPIs, more books in being the top 20 than the 5 behind him. And myself and Jeff would talk about this a lot. And one of the things that he said to me, which resonated with me, KPIs are not to see what you're not doing. They're actually to see how you can improve. And what I've learned through the years, and I'm a believer of, simple metrics. Don't overcomplicate them, because people can get too caught up in the metrics. I read many years ago that people can look at data, but at the end, the CEO makes the decision of what's the gut feeling. Even though he's looked at all this, he'll make the gut feeling. System, process, behavior, simple metric. If you have a system like SalesCraft and break that system down into simple steps and educate yourself in that, in the language, the communication, each step in the way, you're creating a path for yourself to be a better closer. Process, doing it day in, day out, day in, day out, till you get better. Behavior, how you feel about yourself, knowing that when you are confident, you will close more deals than when you're lacking it. So the 33% turns the whole sales department on their head, because you have Johnny selling this way, and you have Susie selling this way, and Anthony over here selling another way, and no one knows what's going on, but they're all closing deals. But if you can then show them a system, you figure out where the weakest link is, why Johnny's only closing 20%, because Johnny's great at fact finding and he's great at giving the demonstration, but he's really bad at handling the objection. The weakest link is there, fix it. Susie, talking to a lot of people, she's great at fact finding, but she's falling down in her percentage in presentation. Fix that weak link so then she can move to the next. So the metrics of a sales department is having it functioning like a living, breathing organism, that everyone is doing the same thing day in, day out, with adding their own personality to it and their own energy. And when you get that swing into place in harmony, then you start to see the growth within the sales department and more deals being closed.
Wow, beautiful. It's interesting to me because really, and we've been through this in 2025 with my agency. Really, first and foremost, the system is just as good as the output will be just as good as the input, first and foremost. So you really have to think about that this way. But really, it's interesting. I think it really depends on obviously what you do and how precise everything needs to be and so on. But really, flexibility within a winning system is so important. I think that we see it with school where flexibility is not enough, and therefore we have children that are on the antipode perhaps of one another, but need to learn the exact same way, the exact same pace, the exact same exam, so on and so forth. I think the world is going towards more and more personalizations, more and more of, hey, here's a toolkit. All right, here's a toolkit. Here's what we know works because we have years of experience to prove it, and we have all these results. That being said, Susie, you're maybe more of a social emotional profile. John, you might be more of an analytic profiles. Guess what? The way you conduct these, the way you use the toolkits and you implement the toolkit will be different. And we will be actually doubling down on those differences as strengths and not just a bug perhaps of a feature, I suppose. And really, I see more and more of this conversation. I'm a big fan of them. Obviously, there's always the key component of how different can be too different. So we lose perhaps the scope of what the toolkit is. But I'm really interested from their perspective, when you're trying to strike that balance of adding your own personality, adding your own twist to a winning toolkit, what's the most effective way to do that? And perhaps from an organization perspective, should we continue to be not only to be proud, but I suppose to encourage our people to again flourish within his personality instead of restricting it for perhaps a lack of understanding of a system?
You can micromanage a company or the department to death. When I was a chairman of a company, we had probably, I think there was 70 people involved in the company. And we would have the engineers and coming in. And when I got involved in the company, people would come to my door and complain about things. And I would say, I don't want to know. Don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with a solution. So anyone knocking on the door with a problem, they were wasting their time. And the people that would come and complain eventually left because all they were doing was complainers. And the people then would come to me with solutions, started to get creative. And when a person is creative, you say to them, okay, let's see how this works. Now, before you give them the green light to go and be creative, first you have to understand what the plan is and walk them through that process and know what that end result is, and then give them the green light to go and do it. If it is a complete failure, you get the blame. But if it's a complete success, they get the reward. So when you are developing a system with Susie and John and everyone, you are looking at their personalities. Earlier on, I said high determination, high innovation. Salespeople like working on real salespeople aren't team players. They like working on their own, and you have to accept that. So you may have someone in sales because they can talk, but they're really bad at sales. But they might be great as customer service. When you go into an organization to train the team, you might have some of the salespeople leave. Why? Because you're putting pressure on them. You're asking them to step up to be a true sales professional. And they might have just got into sales because they fell into it. And most people do fall into sales because they failed at something else. But the real sales professional loves the job, sees it as a profession, sees it as they get up every morning, they love closing deals, they love the win, the ego, the confidence, they love that close. They sense the close before it's even done. The whole buzz. Everyone, when you think about sales and sales department, we always talk about the close. But the department or the salesperson has to dig through an awful lot of shit to actually get to them. The prospecting, digging into all the no's, someone telling them to F off. It's just in the trenches, it's dirty, it's gritty, it's not exciting. But the close, those, 1 out of every 3 that you should be closing, that's the sweet spot. That's I've had a good day.
Beautiful. Before talking about what's next, I want to spend a bit more time with the book, because I like how you said, I spent the last 6 months building sales trainings online, but all of it came from the book. So I suppose from that structure, the quintessential part, the first thing you work on was writing the book. Is that correct?
And the book came out of I was just writing something for one of my clients, and I just kept writing and kept writing, kept writing.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's actually where I was going. If we spend a bit more time on this book of yours, this new book of yours, I remember a quote which was, the book is a toolkit. Start with one tool and the work gets easier tomorrow, which we spent the whole episode talking about. But really, what I'm most interested in, and I ask this to all authors because I think it's such an interesting practice, exercise, I suppose. I always refer to Blaise Pascal, which I love, big fan of. And there was this quote of hers, which is, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, meaning that this concisiveness of information, specifically when talking about something as a systems, the directness, the ease to digestion is something that is so important. And I think that I was just looking at this interview by Tucker Carlson and Sam Altman yesterday, actually, which was a very interesting one. And he was talking about the more we interact with these type of tools, which has, let's be honest, a very flowery way of discussing ideas, the more we start to see it with human beings. I see it in my own interactions. There are some words that people start to use, like unlocking, that I know for a fact they did not say this before texting with ChatGPT. Really, though, this conciseness of idea, that's why I'm a big fan of Marcus Aurelius, that's why I'm a big fan of Seneca. There's a beauty in simple, straightforward writing. So I'm interested from your perspective, since I didn't read the book, what's the single chapter, if you have to name one, that every founder sellers should dog ear? And I suppose, how could they dive into that, digest it, and apply it as effectively as possible moving forward?
Well, let me just say a couple of things. One, for anybody in life, I think the greatest gift that they should know is the law of reciprocity, because it's a skill, and I've been using the law of reciprocity since the 80s. And it seems to be a new phenomenon now that everyone's talking about it, and I've been using it, decades. When I was putting the book together, I'm all about concise and I hate waffle. And I know that salespeople can't read, are not that don't like spending time reading. And I also know that the attention span of people has got dropped down dramatically. I'm going to let my dog out 1 second there.
You're muted.
Our pup, my daughter came, stuck her head in the door, and our 8-month-old pup wanted to say hello to her, so that's why they were kicking off.
There we go.
You'll edit that out. Consistent, being concise, and the attention span of people have gone. So a good friend of mine has wrote many books on sales, multiple books. And I said to him, we could write the whole sales process on 3 pages. And he went, yeah, I know. I said, well, why is your book's 300-400 pages long? And he says, fillers. So I wrote Salescraft, and I wrote it down as 100 pages. And I developed the book that you can jump into the book anywhere and learn something. So you don't need to read it from page 1 to page 100. You can jump in and go, what are the 5 senses? Or you can jump in and go, order asking questions. Or you can go in and say voice tonality. Or you can go into fact finding. The book is designed for salespeople to have on their desk that at any time they want to just get that little edge before they jump on a call, they can pick it up and they can read it.
I love that. Very Alex Hormozi, actually. That's very interesting. Joe, tell us about designing the next 12 months. You talk about using this word quite a lot. I use it as well because it is. Strategy is a choice. That's Michael E. Porter, and really, it is so important to be thinking ahead. And every single successful people that I know, they're obviously, now we just got into Q4 this year. They're already talking about Q4 next year, perhaps what's going to be happening then. So really, from their perspective, I suppose, with Salescrafts and everything that you've been working on perhaps for the last year or so, what's your top experiment for the coming year? And I suppose what leading indicator, as always, will tell you that it's working?
Well, we are launching now in the next week Facebook campaigns where we're selling this book for $4.95. And if people buy the book, they will also get the audio book, and they'll get a mastery sales video and a video on building rapport. So a lot of bumps on it, and you'll be aware of that. We're launching all the online sales training for people who couldn't afford for our training. They'll be able to tap in and get the knowledge that we're teaching $1 million companies with. And we're running that, and we're going to also be creating a breakthrough brands private members group, which will have X amount of business owners in it paying a monthly subscription to tap into my 30 years of knowledge, and will be able to jump on a call regularly and ask me questions about from marketing, growing business, to raising funds, to hiring, to selling a company, whatever that may be. Tapping in, and we're going to assist those people to build that private members club for greatness.
Outstanding. Mr. Joe Dalton, thank you so much for being on the Meaningful Podcast. Was absolutely terrific. You have a very soothing voice, by the way. You have a very delicate
So I've been
voice.
told.
I really, really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. I would love if you can leave our audience with some last words of wisdom, please.
Be kind to yourself, and in moments know that you are safe, you have enough,
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.